Hello, ladies. Happy New Year. This is Shirita with CPR for the Soul. And I hope everybody enjoyed their New Year's and taking today as a time to maybe self-reflect, setting your intentions for 2026 and reflecting on 2025. So before we get started, I just wanted to remind you that my content that I provide for CPR for the Soul is solely based on my experience. I am not a health care provider, mental health provider, therapist, financial advisor. So if you are in need of professional help, please seek the guidance that you need, as my content is solely based on sharing my personal experience and my small insights. So today what I would like to kind of talk about is, as I'm having my tea, being a nice human. I shared a little bit about what today was going to be about, so let me just give, for those who did not see the video, some context around today's topic. I attended a Christmas party, and it had it was a diverse group of individuals, so white, Hispanic, and Black. And the hostess did an amazing job. It was so much fun. Played games to get to know one another. It was a really good time. I did notice, however, that the whites were mingling with the whites, the blacks were mingling with the blacks, and occasionally you may have seen mingling, especially during the games. So fast forward to a couple of days after the party, the hostess mentioned that two individuals came up to her and said, one said they were really surprised that white people were going to be there. And I was really surprised to hear that this individual said that, because I know this individual mentioned they go to church. And so the other individual stated that had they known that there was going to be white people there, they would not have shown up. And not sure of their religious background or beliefs, but just because of them being Black, I was just really surprised to hear that, but I'll share that, why I thought that a little in the video. So I may be overly sensitive to this topic because I have grandchildren that are interracial, white and Black, and I have a child who is interracial, my ex being white. And so, but I'm very proud to come from a family who grew up in an era where the Martin Luther King days of segregation and, being hosed down, and the civil rights movement. My dad at one point being part of the Black Panthers movement. And I'm really proud that I had parents that, even though in that era, they still taught my brothers and I, you be a nice human, you like people for who they are, how they treat you. Do their morals align with yours? The integrity, does it align with yours? Even growing up in that era of segregation and how it was back then, they still managed to say, you don't treat people differently because of the color of their skin. So I'm very, very proud of that. And so I have always, although I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood, I've also had my family to lean on in terms of to remind me of who I am and some of the things that I can experience in life as being a Black woman. So I'm very proud of what my parents have done, and what my parents and my extended family have done to keep me grounded, and especially my parents, in the sense of, you don't treat people differently because of the color of their skin, and because of how we as Black individuals are being treated. It's like you don't want to do the same thing. So why I was so surprised by the person who says they're a Christian and they go to church, and some of the things you may hear me refer to in this video is Christianity, because that's what I grew up on, that's what I was taught. Although I have a different outlook on Christianity, I'm more spiritual than I am religious, but I still fall back on Christianity. So I was taking a religion and philosophy course when I went back to school. That was like one of my favorite classes next to critical thinking. And I remember the first chapter that we talked about was, how do you know what you know to be true? And it invoked a lot of questions. And my conclusion with that is, I only know what to be true because what I was taught. It then in turn had me do a paper about morals and integrity, because that's what I was taught. So I'm speaking to my truth. But then we started talking about, and then further in the class, we talked about like Christianity. We talked about the different religions. So like Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, Islam. We talked about all of them. And my conclusion from that class with all the different religions is, we all end up in the same place. And I don't know about any of you. There has not been one person to return in this day to say, my religion is better. My religion is superiority. So I look at it this way. This is my interpretation of all the religions, because there is a lot of commonality in all the religions. But I look at it this way. So I'm having a party, and I am inviting a Christian, someone who believes in Christianity, Hinduism, Judaism, and Islamic. I'm inviting them to my house. I give them the address, and they all make it to my house. And as we're talking, one person said it may have taken them this long and that long, and they're each telling me the directions that they took to get here. But at the end, they're all here. They all made it to the same destination. So I asked myself, if all these different individuals made it to my destination, who am I to say that my way is the right way? Because at the end of the day, we're all going to meet our maker, our creator, or however, a higher power. So who am I to say that your way, or who are you to say that your way is better than mine? So in leading up to this, I found that all the religions have a common theme when it comes to treat others how you want to be treated. And there's no race is superior over the other. So I would like to share read some of the things that I've researched and looked up. So Christianity, the theme is love your neighbor as yourself. All people are equal before God. Do to others as you would have them do to you, which is Luke chapter 6, verse 31. Love your neighbor as yourself, which is Matthew chapter 22, verse 39. Judaism, the theme is human equality and ethical duty toward others. You shall love your neighbors as yourself. That's Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18. All humans descend from Adam, so that no one can claim superiority. Islam, the theme is brotherhood of humanity, and no Arab or superiority over a non-Arab, nor a non-Arab over an Arab, no white over black, nor black over white, except for piety. Hinduism, oneness over all beings, divine spark in every person. Although Hindu societies have struggled with caste, core scripture teaches equality of soul and divine unity. The wise see the same spirit in a learned priest, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and an outcast. Buddhism. I wanted to bring this one up as we're seeing on social media right now. The monks are walking from Texas to Washington, D.C. in regards to peace. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. But Buddhism, compassion for all beings. No one is superior by birth. All beings deserve compassion, loving kindness, and respect. And the non-religious, atheist, and secular humanist ethics. And these, atheists to me, and I know some atheists too, And their values are grounded in reason, empathy, human rights, shared humanity, real world consequences of harm and injustice. And I remember having a conversation with one of my friends who, and I'm sorry if I'm misquoting, but I believe she said she was atheist. And her reasoning for that is not understanding if there's a higher power or a God, but she just believes that, believes in human rights, just being good to one another. And prior to having that conversation with her, I was always taught that atheist was wrong. And reading, what I'd looked up about atheists and secular humanist ethics, no, the theme is people deserve dignity because we are all human. I don't think that that's wrong. I don't think that that's of the devil. I think we all want to be treated fairly and equal. So the common thread that I've seen, to me, and I wrote it down, the common thread is no human is superior. All people deserve dignity. Love, compassion, fairness, and unity are sacred obligations. Racism is a violation of truth and moral law. I'm going to repeat that again. Racism is a violation of spiritual truth and moral law. So in self-reflecting, I think we should ask the question, how can I ask someone who had a party that was of a diverse group, how can I ask the question or make the statement, wow, I'm just surprised that there's white people here, and then turn around and go to church on Sunday. Turn around and give praise to a baby, Merry Christmas, because that's the birth of Jesus Christ. Racism is a violation of spiritual truth and moral law. So I share that to say, even in religion, we all have there's the same commonality, and we should not be treating others any different because we're all one human. And even in that statement where the individual said, I would not have come had I known white people were going to be here. And I understand that to some degree, but my question I would have wanted to ask this person is, how does that make you any different than them when you have that mentality? In my opinion, that would mean that you're just as bad as them. I am not saying that racism does not exist. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is it's a violation of spiritual truth and moral law. Moral, because I'm always about, where do people's morals align? Do they align with mine? So, and be a nice human being. So that would be my question to that individual. How does that make you any different than them? Now, he or she may have had some experiences that could justify that reasoning. But that's where you have to be you have to do some self-reflection and forgive. For example, I've experienced racism. I've experienced racism within 6 months of moving to North Carolina. I remember working at a car rental place, and my manager asked me to pick up a customer that was about 45 minutes from the branch. Somebody else should have picked this individual up, but he asked me to go do it. So I go pick up the individual. My GPS gets me all off track, and there's like this old gas station. And I see this older man raise up the garage, and I roll down my window and I said, "Excuse me, can you tell me how to get to so-and-so? My GPS has me lost." And he said, and I quote, "Fuck you, darky." Now, my first instinct was I put my hand on the handle and I was going to get out of the car, and my little voice said, "You need to whip his ass." But then there was another voice that said, no, get in your car. You don't know what he has or who he has back there. Get in your car and you'll figure this out. So finally I was able to get back on the main road, pick up this family. It was a family of 4. It was 4 white individuals. And I'm driving and I'm just steaming. And all I could think of is I want to tilt this car over, kill these white mofos. But I'm driving and I get to work and my manager sees how upset I am and he pulls me in the office. He's like, is everything okay? And I said, no, I want to go home. And I told him what happened. Tall, white male, puts his arms around me and he says, I am so sorry that you had to experience that. And told me I could go home. And as I'm walking out of the office, my other coworker walks by me and he's like, hey, Shy, what's the matter? What's going on? I proceeded to tell him the story. And this is someone with a strong country accent and born and raised in North Carolina. And he was like, okay, I'll talk to you later. About an hour after I get home, that my coworker texts me, white male, and says, Shy, I am so sorry that you had to experience that. This is not my North Carolina. This is not my belief. Now, those 2 individuals, white males, have definitely replaced what that one white male, ignorant white male, did to me. Now, I have plenty of racist stories that I could share, but that one stood out to me in the sense of I have to start looking within myself and having the questions and having the conversations. Again, there are bad people in every race. I have had conversations with Black individuals who don't even like their own people. Okay, I've had white individuals, the same thing. But another friend of mine, when we were having that conversation about, had she known that white people were going to be there, they wouldn't show up. But a friend of mine had also said, in this climate of, our administration, do they not realize that there's some Black people who voted for Trump and then there's some white people who voted for Kamala? Like, when do we step outside of allowing society and our government to stop racism? Racism has been around. My son has me reading this book called The Slave Ships, and it's taking me forever to read it because it is very deep, it's very dark. But racism has been around for centuries. And so my thought process is it stops with me. Am I going to change the world? Probably not, but it does stop with one individual and being self-reflective. If you have a Christian belief or if you're spiritual, the common theme around that, if you're really reading your guide, is racism is a violation of spiritual truth and moral law. I personally think that's something we should all tattoo on our forehead, but that's neither here nor there. That is the common theme around all religions. So I can say why it has happened. So the Bible, the Bible that I read, and it has good, it's a good foundation. It has some really good roots, some really good nuggets. The 10 Commandments, do not worry. Love your God with all your heart. So there's some really good nuggets in the Bible. What I believe happened is humans have used the Bible to weaponize people. Because you can't tell me that you're reading something that says, love your neighbor as yourself, and then turn around and then you go and you treat someone differently because of the color of their skin. Or as a Black individual, go into a church and there's a huge picture of a white Jesus Christ and you're praising him. But then on Monday or Tuesday, you don't want to have lunch with your coworker because they're white, or you don't want to go to a party because there's white people there. Make that make sense to me. So I'm not sharing this video to be judgmental. I am sharing this video to invite you to look inward, because racism is only going to stop with us. We can't rely on government. We can't rely on society. It relies on you, yourself, the individual. I interact with white people. I interact with Black people, Hispanic, Asians, people from India. I interact with all kinds of people, and I've learned different things. I've learned that there's some Black people I don't want to deal with, Indians, Asians, and it's not because of the color of their skin. Their energy just doesn't gel with me. Nobody can tell me that I would never tell someone I don't want to deal with you because of the color of your skin. I would never do that, because I know what it feels like to be mistreated because of the color of my skin, and I wouldn't want anyone to feel that way. So I invite everyone to look within yourself, and the question I would like for you to ask is, where in your life do you need to widen your circle? Who have you ignored, judged, or misunderstood? And what small step can you take toward compassion? And I also invite you to go and have coffee or tea with someone who doesn't look like you, and sit down and have a conversation about anything and share that with me. So I invite you to do that. I want to thank each and every one of you for listening and hearing my small insight on that, because racism only stops with us. We do not need to depend on society. We do not need to depend on government. It stops with us. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. And definitely share with me, who have you sat with today that does not look like you, and you've had a conversation with? Share that. I would love to hear your thoughts. So thank you again. Happy New Year. And always remember, be a nice human being.